One of our favorite mottos every year was to fail as much as possible because the learning curve in gymnastics is to fail. As coaches, if we allow an athlete to see a failure in a turn as a failure, we're not doing our job. There's no high-level gymnastics skill that you're going to learn without thousands of mistakes. But whenever we lose sight of that, that's when the kids start putting so much pressure on themselves that every turn has to be successful. The learning curve is always failure first in gymnastics, and it's not that way in a lot of other places in our athletes' lives.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NGA podcast, where we talk all things gymnastics. I'm your host, Rebecca Grady, and I'm here with my incredible co-hosts,
Ian Kreider,
Mike Nador,
Rob Axelrod.
All right, and today we have a very special guest joining us, Brian Neal.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so Brian is a very accomplished gymnastics coach. He was an Olympic gymnast. No, just kidding. Not that part.
Professional fisherman.
So Brian has had multiple successful programs that he's run and owned in gymnastics. He's sent lots and lots of girls. He can give you specific stats maybe, but he's gotten lots of girls to NCAA athletics. He dabbled in the elite world for a little while. He's had gymnasts create their own skills, and now he is the women's program director for the NGA. And he's doing a fantastic job. We couldn't ask for a better leader of that program, and we are super excited to have him on today.
Yes, and we're very excited to have him on for a specific topic, one that's helped create NGA in the first place, and one that matters to every single one of us in the sport, gymnastics culture. So this topic specifically, people care about very deeply. It's a topic that can bring a wide range of perspectives. Everyone has different ideas about what healthy coaching can look like, what's appropriate, how much structure athletes need, and how to balance accountability and support. So even with all this progress that we've made, there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty around these conversations. People worry about what they're doing wrong. They're worried about asking questions, losing trust, and sometimes losing their job. So it can be a very sensitive topic. And so finding that shift to healthier culture can be really confusing and stressful for some of us. So we thought this would be a perfect time to sit down with Brian, someone who has been a part of NGA since day one, to talk about what things look like when this organization started, what we've been working towards, and maybe what still needs to happen for the future and where we would like NGA and the direction of gym culture to go. So I thought a really good first question for Brian would be is, from your perspective, what were some of the moments or patterns that really made you realize that we needed NGA or we needed a change in the sport?
For me, I think I went really through a lot of struggles, feeling committed to kids and trying to get them to college. And the college process, the recruiting process, it's hard, and no one understands the process, and a lot of kids burn out as they get close to the end. So felt like there was an opportunity for there to be a clear path to college. There was an opportunity for there to be a new generation of coaches, and even the older generation, Mike and Rob and I, who are trying to coach what we think is the best possible way for athletes and for our programs.
Yeah, what were some of the confusing parts, and what has NGA done to kind of make that more clear?
Well, so we're just a single track program. We have one goal, top to bottom, is to get athletes to college. So by focusing only on that, it's kind of clarifies what you're there for every day. We still have the kind of Excel-based program, but it's only one goal. I mean, it is literally level 10 NGA is NCAA rules for gymnastics. So every year, it's a simple goal. Build the program from bottom to top and to help steer kids that in their goals to get to college.
Yeah, I thought that was great because for sure coming from the other world, right? And as I was going up through gymnastics myself, I would look at it and just go, man, level 10 is harder than college. And I would look at college gymnastics, and yes, if you look at the really big D1 teams, you'll see some big routines. But if you look at just like the everyday college level athlete, most of them are doing much easier routines than what
Yeah.
like a traditional level 10 would be doing. So when I first heard about NGA and how level 10 was just mimicking NCAA rules, I was like, that makes total sense. Why would you have to do something harder to then qualify you to be able to make a college team? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you just do what you needed? And coming from the men's side of things, like that's kind of what it was anyway. The men's side of things was like, well, you're going to get better in college anyway, so make it to level 10 and hopefully you're doing pretty good, but at least back then it was like, yeah, let's get you better when you get to college. Where women's gymnastics was a lot of get to college and retire, and men's
Yeah.
gymnastics was get to college, get better, see what else you can do.
Yeah, and it's always been confusing. Female athletes were thought to have peaked much earlier than male athletes,
Yeah.
in the past. And I don't know if that's completely true in today's world, but there was a lot of pressure to get athletes to level 10 by the eighth grade or the ninth grade or whatever. And I think that's still true in a lot of directions, but it's definitely not the only way. And we proved that at the NGA for sure.
Yeah, and from that perspective, it's gymnastics has evolved so much that now women really can't peak that young because gymnastics for women has turned into a more power versus truly artistic sport, kind of like what men's gymnastics did a long time ago. So for us, men can't peak that young at all anymore, and but women are certainly transitioning to that where you go, yeah, you can get to level 10 early, but as far as peaking goes, no, you haven't even hit your full potential at that age.
Yeah. Well, I think switching to the vault table and the
Yeah.
trajectory of the Yurchenko vaults, you're not going to be a young, level 10 doing the collegiate level vaults that everybody's trying to do.
I've got some comments. I think when you talk about the culture, whether it be men's or women's gymnastics, looking at the NGA program and kind of what it provides, one thing comes to mind is safety. It provides some safety, not pushing for those high level elite skills, whether it be early for the boys or early for the girls. That comes into play where the goal is a collegiate bound athlete. That's the direction and the focus. And you can take a little more time. And I just see a lot of young coaches out there before they've done the proper preparation, physical preparation, making sure the athlete is actually ready to learn a skill. They're teaching the skill. And I think that's one of the things that I love about NGA is that's not the case. The preparation mentally and physically for the athlete is above and beyond learning that high level skill. I tell my athletes sometimes it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Take your time, learn it right, make sure you're physically ready to learn it. It's not just, and especially with boys, they just want to chuck it sometimes, they just want to run out and do the skill. And that's how they get hurt. And so trying to back that up and let them know in the culture of NGA in our gym is we want to make sure that our bodies are physically ready and able to do that.
The skill work of progression and that sort of thing. I mean, we've seen a huge culture shift in the way that coaching is done and just the whole attitude behind coaching. So, and NGA is certainly at the forefront of trying to help coaches learn how to, positively coach and how to coach in a manner that's best for the athlete. So, Brian, what were some of the gaps that you saw prior to NGA, and what are some things that we're doing to help kind of close those gaps and help with coaching
Yeah.
styles and culture?
Well, I think the prevailing coaching technique, coaching style, probably from the 70s and 80s into the 90s was, the hotter the fire, the harder the steel. So the tougher you are as a coach, the tougher your kids are. And Mike said it's a marathon, not a sprint. So if you try to be hard on a kid for 10, 12, 13 years, you're going to burn them out and you get a lot of negativity. You take a lot of generations of kids who at a logical, well-planned, paced practice and program could have been super successful. Just instead, everybody followed the times and you just pushed. So I feel like we did a good job of bringing priorities and goals forward in the sport with the NGA. We are not so focused on winning and goals that we are pressuring kids out of the sport.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I love how
Mm.
we've established the goals in NGA. And if you would share some of those with everyone, because a lot of people don't understand exactly the background of NGA, especially if you're not a part of it. So if we can explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So for me, from the coaching side, the NGA is a challenge. It's asking every coach that comes into the program to see if you can get athletes as good as you got them in the past, but in a positive way. If, we all had a comfort zone, we all had a way that we defined our success, we all had how we got a kid through a problem, level 9, first year release moves, new series, we all had our styles. Well, the NGA is asking coaches to come in and say, if your style was of the prevailing styles of the time, is there a more positive way for us to coach, yet still get just as good of results? And to be honest, a lot of the coaches that have joined the NGA are amazing. When you go to our camps, our national team camp, you just see so much positivity. You see so many people excited for good gymnastics and the kids supporting and having a great time.
Yeah, I think that the years of being 10 years old and level 10 are kind of out the window. My whole life, that's all you ever want to have, 10 kids at 10 years old doing level 10. It's everybody at 10 at the 10. Yeah, sure. And then after they get there, what do you do with them? I'm going to spend 7 years at level 10. I mean,
Yeah.
what am I doing? So it's finding that happy medium. We're struggling a little bit, I think, in the world, especially here in this world at aerials. It's like almost like a little bit gentle coaching, but you can still get coaching done with like discipline that doesn't have to be negative. And that's where
Yeah.
we're trying to get these kids to understand that you can be a disciplined athlete. You can have, good discipline in your training. You can work on your shapes and your forms, which we're all trying to share here, especially through the podcast. But, more importantly, you can have discipline in your coaching style. You can have a positive vibe through your coaching style and still get great athletes. Maybe a little struggle for all of us sometimes, but hey, that's where we're headed.
Yeah, it definitely takes practice. And I love that you brought that up, Rob, because that I feel I've been seeing that in a lot of areas. When I talk to coaches, social media, I say that a lot on too. So, and I know a lot of you are in some of the groups that I'm in, and there's these discussions when it comes to whether something is what needs to be reported to safe sport, or like how do we find a balance between these extremes? Because before gymnastics, a lot of fear-based coaching was kind of one extreme. And then a lot of times coaches feel like they have to switch to this completely other side of the spectrum. So more of like a permissive, we just allow everything kind of coaching. And it doesn't need to be that way. With everything, there's these shades of gray. And you can still have, like what you said, great coaching, supportive, positive, but you can still have structure. You can still have consequences. You can still have expectations for your athletes, but it's just done differently. And I think a lot of people get confused with how do we actually do that?
Yeah,
Because it's hard to do.
That's where the hard part comes in. You
Yeah.
have to have consequences. And if you think about what they do in school, I mean, these kids, they have consequences in school that you would think that are should be safe sported, right? They get to school late, and what do? They keep track of how many lates they get, and after so many lates, they have detentions, or they have demerit systems, or if sick days, you didn't take it, you took an absence, an unexcused absence, they threaten to not let you graduate or go to the next year. I mean, there are consequences, but you want to have consequences in your gymnastics program, then you have to make them true to what they need to be. Like you can have discipline with natural consequences, and that's one of the key features we have here. We have 12 teaching principles and 7 unifying principles that we try to teach, and that's one of them. And the discipline with natural consequences is simple. Like, okay, you're having a hard time at practice, or you're misbehaving, you're being disrespectful. There's a warning, then maybe you get kicked off the event. Maybe you get asked to go home. If it continues and there's a problem, even behavioral problem with your teammates, then maybe you get asked to take off of a week, whereas before, like, okay, do 10 rope climbs. Well, that wasn't enough. Do 10 more, here's 50 push-ups. Your consequences have to match. So you missed the squat on. Okay. So you're going to do 10 rope climbs. Well, how does that help the squat on? And maybe we go back and we do 10 drills for the squat on, and then we attempt the skill, or we help the skill out. But what did the 10 rope climbs do to help the squat on? And I use that example constantly. So I mean, that's just one example of consequences that, again, you have to have them. We all have to have consequences, but what are they and why are we doing them? Is it negative? Are you angry at the gymnast? Is it the gymnast's fault that they fell off a beam? Okay, maybe, but is it the person of the gymnast? Like, you're going to be angry at a little child, and you don't have to be angry at a child because they fell on beam. The best of the best fall in the Olympics. Just
I think
you have to find that base inside your program and inside your heart to coach as a normal human being with normal consequences.
I feel like the security that you have in a well organized, well thought out program that has a head coach guiding and leading the rest of the staff in a consistent manner takes away a lot of the opportunities for some of these problems. If every time Monday you're going to do this, and the kids are going to go to floor. They're going to do these 5 build-up passes for back tumbling. They're going to do these 5 build-up passes for front tumbling, and then they're going to do their tumbling assignment. And if it's consistent and the coaches know their role in it and the athletes know their role in it, you get away from a lot of the emotional. Now, there's always going to be a point to where an athlete's at the top of their potential maybe, or at the top of their ability at that time. And that's where conflict and stress and stuff in the kid's mind comes in. And then you have to remember as the coach, you're the professional. So you're not there to add more conflict and stress. You're there to guide them through the situation. So I think where we mess up is when our emotional maturity gets to the point to where we're allowing the gymnast to push us outside of our proper coaching, patterns and gets us in a place to where we're not coaching with our minds, but with our emotions.
Yeah, Brian, I am I'm with you there. Since I've just got thrown into coaching right now, back into it with these young boys, some things I've really noticed is that they tend to be, from what I remember, they tend to be a lot more emotional. I would say they're a little more soft than athletes that I've worked with in the past, and I think it's just the upbringing and kind of where society is right now. And I think one of the things they're really lacking is on the women's side too, is that good role model of, what it for the boys, like what it is to be a man, what the and you talked about consequences, but what are their um I'm trying to look for the right word, but basically, what steps do I take? What is normal for me as a young man, emotionally and physically, and to be a little bit more tough. And I think it extends in a lot of young men, even high school, they don't really have an understanding of
Yeah.
that maturity of being a man and what those responsibilities are. What Rob said about the consequences, some of those things, because they've never been subjected to those in their life. And so I think those, I'm probably going out there a little bit with all this, but I think you understand the point that we as coaches have to be that stable, good role model of, of what they want to be someday. I mean, you have to set that good example. You have to do all those things correctly, because I've always found when I've hired a coach on, I look at who coached them, because I know they're probably going to coach the way they were coached. And that's one of the things I look at. Your athletes are going to become a little bit of you. And so the culture that you put in the gym and what you say to the athletes becomes really important. And I do think that they need to have those consequences. I do think they need to have those good role models. And I think that's one thing that I noticed that in the NGA program that the coaches are striving for, and they're looking for to do those things to help their athletes.
One of our tenets in the NGA is that, we should be the emotionally mature adult or professional in the gym and constantly tell the kids, like your learning curve is not at the very top of your emotional high and it's not at the very bottom of your emotional low. You're going to learn the best somewhere's in the middle. So we're not trying to stay at the top or the bottom. We're trying to find a comfort zone in the middle of your learning curve where you learn the best. And then, no one can coach an athlete's emotions. So if an emotion takes an athlete out of being a successful athlete, then you have to let that athlete mature and help them through the process so that they don't short circuit themselves all the time also.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we do have to be that role model. Mike, you're 100% correct. I think the problems that I recently in the last couple of years that I'm running into is that, the coaching, myself, we want it more than the athlete does. So, it's hard to keep our emotions out of it when we're coaching with our hearts on our sleeves. But I always tell the girls, like, you can't let your emotions run your workout. And I feel like sometimes that's what happens is, they take a turn and it's just not good. And it's like the whole world got set on fire. I'm like, no, that's not coming out of the coaching staff, or is it? So we have to step back and look. And all the people that we have in the gym that we've hired are people that I brought into the program and that they fit the culture that we want to have in the program. Otherwise, we don't bring them in the program. You can't have that one, squeaky wheel, so to speak, somebody who is, if you hear the tone of their voice or you hear the words that they use when they're speaking to the athletes, we could say 50 times, don't stand in one corner. You have a whole floor. I don't know how many times a day I say that, get out of the chalk box. Don't take one turn, kip cast handstand, fall over, and then go back to the chalk box, or go to 3 other bars, then come back to the chalk box. You can say those things in a positive way. It seems to be like a repetitive thing for us. And that's where our own emotions get in. It's not, I know I get frustrated, quickly and have to just be on top of myself out here looking down at me. Don't let your emotions run your workout either. You're telling them not to let their emotions run their workout. I can't let my emotions run my workout either. Sometimes you just have to walk away and come back, but there are ways to get that done that don't have to be demeaning to children, and they don't have to be demeaning to yourself. Walk around the way you want children to see you, speak the way that you want children to hear you, and hopefully this lead by example thing hasn't gone completely out the window.
All 3 of you were talking about how you're essentially just modeling your ability to emotionally regulate, to help your athletes to handle these situations and to problem solve. That is one of the best ways for kids to learn. And I always talk about it on here. Kids are more likely to watch us than they are to listen to us. That's why we always say short lectures, short speeches, but they will see everything that you do nonverbally and how you handle situations. So yeah, Mike, you said that kids are a little bit different. They're showing more emotions, that we're trying to build that toughness, I guess, if you want to say it, in them. Or that resilience is like what I like to call it. And us being able to regulate ourselves in front of them is so important for that. And even when we start to get frustrated, like Rob, like you said, you walk away. But they see that as a coping skill to handling extreme emotions. Like, oh, I can walk away. I can take a break. So they see you doing those things. And the more we can model that stuff on how to handle those extreme emotions or to apologize or whatever it is, we're teaching them those skills that they need, not just in gymnastics, but in life. And yeah, teen girls, emotional regulation, very hard for them in the moment.
Yeah,
What?
like
Are you
Rob.
sure?
Rob
Yeah.
was saying that when the girl falls off the beam or misses something on bars and they become just emotionally distressed, and it'll wreck their whole workout. And so one of the tools I use when I see that is I'll always put something in the workout that is a little easier. Usually it's a basic of some type. And I really emphasize when they do that simple skill that they can pretty much all do, I emphasize to them how excited I am and how well they did that. And that kind of keeps them, it's kind of like that. I'm in a bad mood. Oh, I'm in a good mood. I did something good. And so it kind of helps to regulate the workout a little bit. So always put a station in or something that they'll be successful at, so that you can praise them for the good work that they did. And that will relate eventually to that harder skill that they're falling on or whatever the situation is. They won't become so emotional about that skill or as emotional as they normally would.
Yeah. One of our favorite mottos every year was to fail as much as possible, because the learning curve in gymnastics is to fail. Get a coach to invest in you with corrections and drills. Try it again, fail again. Get new drills, get new investment from a coach until eventually all the failures turn into success. So as coaches, if we allow an athlete to see a failure and a turn as a failure, we're not doing our job. There's no high level gymnastics skill that you're going to learn without thousands of mistakes. So the learning process that we're taking athletes through is through failure. We're going to celebrate that you were brave enough to try, even though you failed. And we're going to do these drills and we're going to correct this part of it. All right. So now you're doing that part better. You're brave. You're trying it. It's getting better. We're going to fine tune it. We're going to do another couple of weeks of some drills. But whenever we lose sight of that, that's when the kids start putting so much pressure on themselves that every turn has to be successful. And that comes from parents and being perfectionists as athletes also. but the learning curve is always failure first in gymnastics, and it's not that way in a lot of other places in our athletes' lives.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories about stuff like that is John Roethlisberger, three-time Olympian. For younger coaches, you have no idea who that is, but anyway, but he's one of the owners of Flip Fest and a really amazing human being. But one of the stories he tells about failure is he needed a skill on pommel horse, and I think it was I don't know if I've ever been told exactly what the skill was, but I think it was like a triple Russian or something on pommel horse. He really needed it for it to help his routine for the next Olympics, and he said, "All right." He's having trouble with it. He said, "Okay, I'm going to try it 1,000 times. And if I don't get it 1,000 times, I'll go try something else." So he made it to 1,000 times. He's like, "Well, but I feel like I'm getting close." And so he kept track, like he kept track of the numbers on how many. It took him 3,000 tries to get that skill.
Yeah.
But then he had it. And so he failed 3,000 times, which is an unbelievable amount of times. And keeping track of it too, man, how discouraged could you possibly get with, looking at the tally marks on this journal sheet, right? Where you're just like, man, how many pages of tally marks do I have now at this point of how many times I've failed? But it's such a good reminder to us. And I've heard him say this quote before, but the man on top of the mountain didn't fall there, right? You got to climb your way to the top if you want to make it to the top. You're not just gonna end up there on accident.
Yeah, we use that often too, at tracking the skills. And if they've done 10 of them and none of the 10 were any, real super good, we only did 10. And then I bring up the story like you did, you brought up John Roethlisberger, but Thomas Edison, hopefully they know, invented the light bulb. And I don't know if you all know that story, but he had how many failures? 1,000. So they said, "What, you failed 10,000 times?" He said, "No, I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work." And
Yes,
without
exactly.
that answer,
Mhm.
we don't have a light bulb above our head.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to keep going. That's the thing that we want kids to be able to do. But so many times we look at our own selves, and I look at other coaches at meets, the kid fails and you'll see coaches punch their legs or get in this disgust on their face and walk away, or you hear them under "I can't believe it, she fell on a full turn on beam." Like, are you kidding me? It's like the hardest skill in all of gymnastics, full turn on beam. Like, every kid's got the story of falling on a full turn on beam at some big competition that they didn't need to fall on. So what are you expecting? We all have these stories. I mean, how long have these coaches been coaching, and on their face, they wear disgust. Like, they're disgusted in the athlete because they fell on a turn. Like, they fall all the time. And so I think that's important that we pay attention to that as coaches, that we, again, don't let our emotions run our workouts, or let, lead by example. Leading by example of being angry or frustrated that somebody failed is not going to help the athletes in your program.
Yeah, Rob, I think you're definitely onto something. And to carry it further, just the positive attitude that you as a coach bring into the gym. We have a rule in our gym about no sitting, because if the coach is sitting, it just looks like they don't care. They're being lazy, and then you can't expect the athlete to put out 100% if you are, as the coach, are not putting out 100%. And so just keeping that positive, you know, vibe going in the gym, culture going in the gym, is really important. Like you guys have stated, it's okay to fail. It's okay to to fall. That's just all part of it. The main thing is boys relate to. It's not how many times you fall; it's how many times you get up afterwards and then try it again. And so that's something that you build in a gym culture, that it's okay. It's okay to have that fall in that routine. It's going to make you either focus harder on that skill later, so that doesn't happen again, whatever it is. But it's not the end of the world. And you as a coach have to have, within the gym and in your regular workouts, you have to have that mindset. And even if you don't have that mindset, even if inside you're going, "I can't believe they fell on that skill," you have to put a smile on and go, "Hey, it's okay. It's going to be all right. You're going to get the next one," and that's the culture of the gym. And it tends to, we see that in a lot of the coaches in the NGA program. And so we just need to keep.
Yeah. So Brian, we've talked about where gymnastics was, and how maybe it wasn't the healthiest version of coaching that it possibly could be. And it seemed like there for a while the pendulum really swung the other way, where every time a coach got accused of something, they lost. And they lost big. And it seems like now maybe it's shifted back to the middle somewhere, but Where do you see change that's kind of still needed with gymnastics culture? Where are we kind of headed? Do you feel like what you're speaking about now is kind of the end all be all, or is there kind of like a next level of, hey, all right, now we've got this. Good. You learned how to be positive. Now here's what to do next.
Honestly, for me, I feel like there has to be a greater level of communication with the parents. I can only say so many times the parents don't know. Most of the parents were not gymnasts. You can't take your dad who was, a baseball player and get him to understand, but you really need to take that next level for your program of communicating. So like we were saying, a D level release move is anywheres from a year mastery to 2-year mastery for most kids. If John Roethlisberger, a 3-time Olympian, took 3,000 tries to get it right, the average kid on a D release move or a D flight on beam, it's going to take a year or two. And we have to communicate that to our parents, that their athlete is still working and doing great gymnastics. They're progressing. They're just somewheres in the curve of getting to where they need to be. And too often we don't communicate anything. We especially in today's text message world. So you have so many coaches that are scared to verbally take the time to keep those lines of communications open. So for me, as the coaches, every coach is going to have their own journey. There's opportunities to get educated. Hopefully you have some senior coaches, they have some mentors in your gym or in your life that will, help you through problems. But the thing that we're not doing is giving coaches, young coaches, the tools to talk to parents and explain, what's going on in the sport of gymnastics.
Yeah, and that's something that we at the gym I'm at, we tell our junior staff, hey, this is what we expect, because they have like a 15-minute break in between classes, which is crazy compared to other gyms I've been at. But anyway, they have a 15-minute break in between classes, and they're supposed to spend 5 minutes after they dismiss talking to parents, then 5 minutes kind of resetting things, and then they get a 5-minute actual break. They can go in the staff room and hang out and check texts or whatever. And so it's something that we do to kind of force them to get comfortable talking to parents, which is something that, when I was a younger coach, that was very intimidating, right? Because most of the parents were 20 years older than me. Now it's weird because most of the parents are my age, but the parents were like 20 years older than me. And I'm sitting here telling them about how their gymnast is progressing. And it was an intimidating thing to learn how to talk to parents. And I'm sure there's parents back when I coached in Memphis that surely have some funny stories about talking to me and how timid I was or how I stumbled over words or whatever kind of poor communication I was exhibiting there. But, you just have to do it to get better at it. And yes, having someone in your life that can say, hey, this is now the time to address this, or this would be a great way to approach this subject with a parent, or you know what, just be upfront. It's okay. You can just say it like it is. You don't have to be rude, but just say it like it is. You don't have to sit here and kind of beat around the bush and go, well, maybe a kip is hard and blah, and she's kind of trying sometimes. You can just say it like it is, right?
Well,
Yeah,
it's
I think
hard.
something that is helpful is to have that, when you talk about parent communication, is that, it's very normal, if you competed as a level 6, for 1 year, you're not going to move to level 7 the next year. You could be level 6 for a few years, and that's okay. It's not something like every year you have to move up a level. So, and I think that's something that parents don't understand. They say, they spent a whole year at this level, we should be moving to the next level. And some of these level jumps, especially on the boys' side, are huge. They're big jumps. And so just to let the parents understand, and the athlete understand that it's normal that you'll probably be at this level for a couple years. So it's very unusual to have that athlete that just moves every year. They're out there. There's super talents out there, but for the majority of the athletes, just to let the parents know that it's okay. It's okay to be at a level for a few years if you need to get it right.
I had an elite gymnast who was an Olympian coaching a camp with me several years back, and we were talking to the athletes, and one of the athletes asked her if she had ever repeated a level, and she started laughing. She said, I repeated level 6, I repeated level 8. Then when I went from 10 to elite, I quit 3 times before I made the Olympic team. And I was like, hallelujah. Like, kids, are you listening? It's
Finally,
not,
a normal person.
yes, it's not a perfect journey. Like nothing worthwhile is easy. Like they don't understand that, and the parents especially. And we've all heard it 1,000 times. If she doesn't make the next level, we're not going to waste any more money. We're pulling her out. And again, it's one of those places you need to say, KIPs are a place where kids get stuck. And your daughter may be one of those kids. She spends an extra year here, back handsprings on beam. All of those little places we can educate them along the way so that it makes the journey less stressful for the athlete, because in those situations, the athletes usually where stuck between the coaches and the parents. And trying to tell mama what they're trying to do, and trying to tell the coaches what mama, and again, we're going through the child for all the communication when we're supposed to be the professionals. So I definitely like that, Mike.
Yeah, that's always a tough position. A lot of times the parents, everybody's a coach today. They go on Instagram and then they'll come in, and I've got text messages with, a breakdown of how their kids should be training for the day. And I'm thinking, do you want to come in and coach? And then you bring up the other thing too. It's like, well, they're spending so much money and then they're not getting success, so we're going to pull them. So if you were successful, then the money was worth to spend. I'm confused. Gymnastics for us here is, especially at Ariel's, it's not just about gymnastics. It's just not another cartwheel. It's, what are we teaching them? What values do we get to instill in these young children that we send them off into the world? And for me, especially, and most people that are on here, especially our older guys over here, this has been like the base for our life. I mean, gymnastics molded us to who we were. And it wasn't the skills, it wasn't the successes that we had. It was all of the grit and the problem solving and the communications. And yes, it was hard. I mean, I think I would date myself as to say, like Ian, when I was younger and everybody was 20 years older than me, and then they became the same age as me. And now my gymnasts are coming back to me with their kids to do gymnastics. And I'm thinking, I'm still here. I guess I'm getting old. But, the parents do like to have their say, and it's fine. I find it's okay to let them talk about it, and then you politely guide them in the right direction. Think I've talked about it on here before. Parents are telling me what they need to do and how to do it, and I'll back it up with, well, like, did you get those new test tubes yet, or the new Bunsen burners? And they'll be like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know. Aren't you like a scientist or something? Did you get those things that we ordered in the mail? It's like, we didn't order those things. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, trying to be in a nice way to tell them that they're not a gymnastics coach and they don't know what they're talking about. May not always be the right way to do that, but I mean, it still goes on. Just yesterday, we have an Olympian that works here, former Olympian on men's team, and he's here 3 times a week. Sometimes whenever he's here, we have him in, and he was coaching vault, and the kid was walking back and he stopped and giving a correction, and the mom pops her head right into the gym and starts getting on the kid's case how she hit the back of the board and you could have to hit the top of the board. And I've been telling you, you're still not hitting the top of the board. And we're like, she just right in the middle, like, denounced the coach, so that now you got to go talk to that parent. I mean, you have to have a game plan to talk to that parent and not be angry about that with that parent. So like the communication lines got to be open, but not that open.
So I like that we talked about coaches and their ability to communicate with parents, because I do agree that that's kind of a gap within the culture. But what about coaches educating themselves? Because I know that when it comes to transitioning our gym culture to wherever we're wanting it to go, I feel like that's one area that's lacking, is the education of our coaches and how to do these different things. We give examples and we talk about this stuff, but I just feel like no one's formally helping coaches with this area of improvement. And that can be new coaches, but it's also the individuals who've been coaching a really long time. There needs to be some transition. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? And how do you think we should possibly do that for the future?
I'd like to go on that one. I mean, not that I'm patting myself on the back, but I think that when I have these meetings with parents, I take the new coaches in there with me. The second reason that I do that is I teach everybody, don't ever have a meeting without a third person. And the third person could have nothing to do with the meeting. It could be the office manager, and they're impartial to either way. So this way, everybody in the room is protected instead of having that one-on-one conversation. But if you take your younger staff in with you to these meetings, that's the only way they're going to learn how, for the way I want to communicate, or I would like my staff to communicate with the parents in the gym, as well as going out for educational purposes too. You got to send them out there.
Yeah. I always feel like you can go to education at camps and clinics and everything. You can take online courses, but a true mentor, head coach person in the gym. So if you go to 12 hours of education in a year versus having a mentor in the gym 40, 50 hours a week. So every time a mentor sits you down and says that was the right progression, or you know what, that kid wasn't ready for that for this reason. That's an investment in a young coach. As a young coach, if you want to be successful, you have to always be looking to better yourself in every avenue. But the most consistent training you're ever going to get is from a good mentor who's in that gym with you every day and is willing to take the time just at a regular staff meeting. And it doesn't have to be, like personal, but we had a staff meeting every Wednesday for 25 years, and sit down and say, okay, I liked what you did, but it didn't work. Do you have a better solution? And pointed us in directions until we figured it out. So yes, every organization needs to do education, hands-on education, online education. But as a coach, if you want to better yourself, you have to find people that are there with you every day.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, when I was a young coach, I was working with level 6s, but I'd stay for the level 10s, or I'd get there early and watch the level 10s, and then I would spot it. Like, you're not getting paid for it. We're willing to put that time in. You may want to say, hey, listen, why don't you come in and coach alongside me with the level 9s and 10s, and you can, clock in. There's no better education for you to give them if they're standing by you. But in the same token, they all have their own opinions. These younger coaches are so opinionated. They have more drills than they could ever think of because it's all on their phone. And for me, like, you could probably hear it in my voice, like, it's frustrating enough that I've seen enough of these drills already. And I'm not going to lie. I probably see one that they set up and I go, that one's got some potential, needs a little tweaking, and there's always something that I could pick up. I mean, I was every single camp I've ever gone to, I learned something new in my entire life, or got reminded of something I did 20 years ago. Like, wow, that was a great one. I need to do that again. So along the way, while you're being their mentor, try not to stifle them either. Let them have their own opinions. And, I hate to say this one too, but let them try something and let them fail. I mean, that happened during my student teaching, and the guy, he thought my lesson plan was going to be a disaster. And I told him how it was not. It was going to be great. You'll see. I was using high school boys and girls in like grade 9 or 10 to be human cones, and people were going to dribble in between them. And he said, that's not going to work. They're going to fight with the ball. Like, people are going to swat the ball out of there. And I'm like, no, you'll see. And he said, all right, I'm going to stay just so I can see this lesson plan that you wrote. And it failed. I mean, so terribly. But, he let me fail so as maybe next time, if I have an example that he wants to tell me that's not going to work, that I should redo it, maybe I should listen to him. So, but, you have to let people fail a little bit, and as long as it's nothing that's dangerous, and otherwise you need to step in. But they're going to have their own opinions, and they're going to want to have to be able to share them. And we have to, as coaches, allow that too.
What we started this year was we opened our NGA national team camp up for all coaches. So I think we had 80 plus coaches there between the two camps. And many of those coaches came specifically for education and not with athletes. So we have what we called senior consultants, old guys like Rob and Mike and I, staying on
I
each
think
event.
I was one.
Yeah, you don't work in with
I think I was on the list too.
Yeah.
But I get it.
You're on the
Okay, we'll give y'all a little bit of kudos, but that's the whole idea. We were willing to pay people. Not only you're going to coach this rotation, but then once the rotation starts, you're going to step away, and the rest of the staff will keep the athletes coached. And your job is now to talk with the coaches that are coming to this event. So I think we are really looking to do education in a hands-on environment, in a training environment, with mature coaches who have proven to be able to do the job in a positive and effective way.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about NGA. I think a lot of coaches who've been around for a while fear asking questions and asking for help when it comes to challenges because they feel like they should be experienced in that, or they should already have all the knowledge. Then they can feel like, I guess, safe in that environment to be able to discuss those questions that they have and feel like there's not going to be any shaming for them maybe not being knowledgeable enough in a certain area.
Rapid fire?
Rapid fire. I was just going to bring that up. All right. It's only 3 questions, Ryan, but we're going to do some rapid fire. Mike,
Right.
Rob, if you want to jump in, go for it. But okay, so question 1, what's one small change a coach can make this week that immediately moves gym culture into a healthier direction?
One small change. Be as organized as you can possibly be, and realize that when someone says use the positivity sandwich technique, it goes a long ways. Kids by their nature are going to hear the negative say a positive, say 5 positives until they're ready to hear the technical, instead of continuing to let them judge themselves as failures.
I like that. All right. Number 2, what's a simple day-to-day coaching habit that has a big impact on culture over time? And I mean, honestly, your answer to number 1 goes towards that, but you have something else?
Like for me, I was a bar coach, but from over time, it was always to find the joy in the other events. So to go stand on the floor, you got 30 optionals tumbling, get in there. And even though you're not the floor coach, get involved with them, have a great time. But yeah, maybe the same answer as the first one though.
Yeah. Being organized, getting that positivity in on all the events instead of just the one that you're on, showing that support across the bar. Okay, number 3. What's one thing you wish every coach understood about kids today? Not because they've changed, but because we're finally paying attention.
Kids' goals change. Whenever we make a commitment with a kid, you sit here, you're going on the team, we're a college prep program, our goal is to get you to college. And that sounds great. And then what? 6th grade, social media, outside of the gym, life starts. And the goals that the parents believe in and the goals that you as a coach believe in, the kids are still the same amazing kids, but their priorities change. And as coaches, we have to stay in tune with the fact that as the kids go through different phases of growing up, their goals will take different types of coaching to get that accomplished. As old guys, if it worked in 1995 when I did it this way, I want it to still work again. But that's not going to be true in today's age because kids do change their goals quite a bit.
Any final words from anyone else or any answers that you thought while Brian was going through those questions? Everyone's like, no, we're good. Okay.
I'm going to go get on my tractor, Mike, while you go coach.
Now here's the technical correction.
Yeah. The headphones worked.
And
He already knows it now.
Maybe you shouldn't sit with the sun behind you, so beaming off your bald head there. But
The spot of the camera I need to kind of lighten up and
yeah,
brighten
I
up a
got
little
that
bit.
same thing going on right there. Ian always tells me about it. It's like a spotlight that follows on my forehead there.
So I almost had to wear sunglasses today. It was rough.
There you go.
That's right.
Yeah. They're okay. They're good.
Don't forget, those
No.
1%ers run the country, so never mind.
Good point. Guys, look, I've talked with Rebecca a lot. She's doing a lot of work with all the marketing and social media and stuff. So thank y'all. And now that I know how this works, if y'all need me to sit in for some of y'all occasionally or whatever, y'all just let me know.
Yeah,
You'll come
sure.
hang out with us.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like a
Yeah.
Band-Aid. You just had to rip it off.
It's only been a year.
It has been a year. I didn't even think
Well,
about that.
Not quite. It was right around nationals last year, right?
Yeah.
No,
Maybe,
I
yeah.
think it was.
Yeah.
No.
No, well,
I
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
So-
All right, I gotta
we
see
got
a
him
picture.
on.
Nationals to
Yeah.
nationals. I mean, it's a year.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
guys.
Happy
All right.
Thanksgiving.
All right.
Bye.
see ya.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too.
Have no
See ya.
idea how to get off leave. All right.
Yep.
Bye.
Peace out. You didn't do your closing.
I'll just do it now
All right. See ya.
and I'll just insert it.
Bye.
Wait, bye. All right. So this kind of conversation really matters for the future of the sport. If you in your gym have any ideas on how you've been keeping your children safe, supporting them better, doing any form of education, whether that's working with parents or your coaches, we would love to hear it. We really want to empower you as coaches to feel confident, feel equipped, and we are here to help. So if you have questions, please let us know. You can contact us on any of our social media platforms. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share it with anyone who's benefit from the conversation. And thank you so much for joining us here at the NGA podcast. And until next time, stay happy, healthy, and high performing.